Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. Today on the show, we're joined by Dan Nikas, who is the founder of Elite Brands and the powerhouse behind the explosive growth of GearBunch, an e-commerce brand he scaled from zero to over 5 million in its first year. That's pretty remarkable. Dan is widely recognized as a Meta-certified lead trainer, a Klaviyo partner, and one of the most trusted strategic thinkers in e-commerce growth and retention. Through Elite Brands, he helps DTC companies build predictable and scalable revenue systems using data-driven marketing, full funnel retention strategies, and customer experience frameworks. Dan's work bridges the gap between smart customer acquisition and the overlooked world of retention, helping brands to unlock the profit that's already hiding inside their existing customer base. Dan, we are so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, Dan, I know you're based in a small town in Australia. I'd love to hear your story, how you got to where you are. Take us back to the beginning. How did GearBunch start, and what were some of the key milestones that helped you get from 0 to 5 million in 1 year?
How far back do you want to go? You want to go back to the past career and how I fell into...
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. Let's call it the real beginning.
This is absolutely the real beginning. So before I got into online marketing, I was a homicide detective for 17 years in Australia.
Wow.
So, and the look on your face is, and that's exactly the look I want. And it's because, for a couple of reasons. The first is, whenever I'm talking to people, they think that I must come from like this background, marketing background. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like straight out of high school, I went to a police academy in Australia. I was 19 years old. I did that till I was 36. Unfortunately, it took its toll on me. I ended up getting medically retired. It was a hard job to do for that long. Came out of that and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I've got a wife and 3 kids and everything that goes along with that sort of life, and mortgage, all these sorts of things. But I had no other qualifications, or so I thought. Didn't go to university, didn't have a trade, no other work experience except for a couple of casual jobs when I was in high school, and not a really what I thought a transferable skill. You can either be a police officer or you're not. End up connecting with a friend who had gone through a similar journey, and he got involved in online marketing. So this was about 12 years ago now. And I said, well, can you show me what you do? And as it turns out, I actually found what he did was really interesting and found that I had a bit of a knack for it. So I started a fitness blog, which was just about staying healthy as a father of 3. And then I started selling t-shirts through a platform called Teespring, which I think now is just called Spring. It was the first print-on-demand platform, like mainstream print-on-demand platform. And found that I could sell t-shirts, like hundreds and thousands of t-shirts a day. It was ridiculous. This was all driven by teaching myself how to do meta advertising, which back then was Facebook. Very different structure to now. Did a couple of courses, learned it, thought I was doing what everyone else was doing. End up getting invited to speak at some events about how I was doing it. And to my surprise, I was not doing what everyone else was doing. I was looking at it from a different point of view. People were looking at it from a marketing point of view. I was looking at it from an investigator point of view. I was trying to find people who fit the product, which is in turn marketing, but I just approached it from a different perspective. In 2016, so I did that for a couple of years and it was good, but it wasn't my own business. It was basically building someone else's business. It paid the bills and it was a good couple of years. Got approached by a company to offer a new product, which was not t-shirts or hoodies like I was selling, it was leggings. And I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I sort of toyed with the idea of starting my own brand. So I launched a brand called GearBunch at the end of
Okay.
And I launched at the worst possible time. It would be, I think in about a week's time, I think it's like the 10th or 11th of December, it is GearBunch's 9th birthday.
Uh-huh.
Worst possible time. They couldn't fulfill the orders and deliver them by Christmas. Black Friday had just finished. I had to go at it anyhow, and it just took off. January was really rapid growth to the point that, when I say rapid growth, I went from nothing to selling thousands of dollars worth of leggings per day. And then it just snowballed. So it went from meta marketing to Facebook advertising to having to learn what email marketing was, to having to get someone to help me do Google ads, to having to do customer support, to refunds and chargebacks and PayPal and all these little bits and pieces that make up a really successful store. So in the first year, big crash course on how to run a business. Never had that before, never owned a business before, but went from 0 to 5 million in that first year. It just trended, it just hit the right spot with people. We were servicing a segment of the market that just wasn't being serviced very well at the time. You could walk into any store or go in any online store and buy a pair of black leggings or plain leggings. And we went the opposite route. We went and designed products that fitted people's passions, hobbies, you know, what their personality was about. And they're bright and they're out there. And most people would look at them and go, yuck. But that 1% of women out there that it really resonated with, they bought them like crazy.
Interesting.
And we weren't competing with the Lululemons or the big, you know, active wear providers at the time. We were competing in a big open blue sea, and it worked out so well.
Interesting.
So that's how I started into GearBunch.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that you weren't searching for, let's see, maybe I'm getting the phrasing right, but you were using your investigative background to search for people. And you know, tell me how that actually, like, where does the rubber meet the road on that? Like, you know, I have this image in my head of, like, you know, the dogged investigator that's, you know, like knocking doors.
That's what it was. I joke about it. You know, I spent a career and developed a skill set that was to find people that didn't want to be found, is to find people that didn't want to be found. The only incentive when I found them was probably pretty much going to jail, going to prison.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm thrown into, and those people would hide who they were from me. Like, obviously they don't want to go to prison. Right. They're not going to say, hey, I'm over here, I'm going to leave a trail of evidence for you, I'm going to tell you everything about me, where I am, what I'm doing. So, you know, you develop a skill set to find these people, and that's what I was good at. And the other thing I was really good at is getting people to do what I wanted them to do, but make them think it was their idea. So that were my two skill sets. I'm not a big, intimidating guy. I'm like 5'10", like 180 pounds. Like, I'm not this giant who walks into a room with a presence and people just go, oh, I've got to talk to you. I had to be conversational. I had to be intelligent. I had to follow the trail. All of a sudden, I'm thrust into this world of, at that time, Facebook, where people were telling me what they had for dinner, what their favorite restaurant was, what shows they liked, how many kids they had, whether they were married, how old they were, like everything. What their dog's name was, what type of dog they like, whether they hated cats, whether they had been on holidays to this location. So they were telling me everything about themselves. And I figured out on the back end of what used to be called audience insights. So I could find people in the back end that it wasn't just like, okay, I've got a pair of leggings with a dog design on them. Okay. I didn't just go into Facebook like most people were doing at that time and just putting female 18 to 60 interested in dogs. Go out and find these people. There's millions of them, especially in the US where I was marketing. You get 220 million people on the platform there. And I'm like, well, I don't have the money for the algorithm to go through and find out of these millions of people who potentially could be a customer. So instead I found through audience insights ways to target them that was much more granular. So what I was doing is, instead of what most marketers were doing at the time, is they would design a pair of dog leggings and then they would try and go out and find people who might be interested in buying them. I would go out and I would say, really granular, how many people or how many women like German Shepherds? So I would then go into audience insights and I'd find all these little communities and all these little sub-interests, and I would find tens of thousands of people, women, that were into German Shepherds, that were like obsessed with their German Shepherd or their Schnauzer or their Doxy or whatever the dog might be. I'd then look and I'd say, well, no one else has a product like this. So I'd go and get it designed, and then I would go and put that in front of those people because I'd already found them.
Okay.
So I was doing the opposite. I wasn't trying to convince them that they needed or wanted this pair of leggings, I knew what their passion was already. And I would go and create a product and then I'd go and put it in front of them. And the way that I was doing it is I was going and finding other really high converting products in that niche. Mm-hmm. It would be a saying, or it would be, a particular style that wasn't on my products. It was on something else. It might have been a mug. And I would go and incorporate that into my products and put it in front of them. So I had proof of concept. I had this highly super passionate audience because they're already telling me what they like, and I would go and put that in front of them. And that would sell like crazy. And I did that over and over and over and over again in different niches.
Okay.
I would find these hyper passionate people, and that's the way that I sold.
Yeah.
So I was not competing against normal people or normal marketers, but I thought I was until people started asking me what I was doing. And that's when the revelation was, is that actually what I'm doing is a transferable skill from my past career.
Yeah.
I'm actually not approaching it from a marketing perspective. And I like to tell that story because when I tell people and they think, I get up on stage for Meta or for Klaviyo or at another conference and they go, oh, this guy's like, he would have gone and done a marketing degree, or he's worked in sales, or he's in IT. I'm like, no way. So I tell them, I say, hey, if Dan can do it, if you think this is too hard, say this to yourself. If Dan can do it, so can I, because I didn't have all the resources that are around now. I taught myself how to do it, and it's not that hard. It's just about figuring out a system, sticking to your processes, and letting the data tell you where potential customers are.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Dan. And I think it illustrates, like, unfortunately, I have an MBA, and sometimes I wish that I had done more of the School of Hard Knocks or something else to kind of color my experience, because I hear stories of people like you that have these transferable skills, and I feel like I tend to operate within the lines. And Dan, and I think that's a tremendous illustration of like this business principle of find an audience and then build something that fills a need for them, rather than build a product and find an audience for it. So I think that's brilliant, and I can see how that's really applicable. Now I want to pivot a little bit and talk about the other big emphasis and area of interest, retention. So, I think this might be adjacent to what you're talking about, but how are you?
No, it's not. It's so in line with what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, tell me how you emphasize that in your marketing.
Yeah, so these is where the big wins came from GearBunch. I learned fairly early on, just real creatures of habits, humans. So I'm drinking my coffee here. Where is it? There. I go to the same coffee shop every day. There's about 7 coffee shops. I get the same coffee every day because I walk in, they see me walking in, they start making my coffee before I've even said hello. And by the time I've paid, or sometimes before I've even paid, my coffee's on the counter, ready to go. Yeah. We all have these things that we love. We like simplicity. We like less friction. I've got trust that they make a good coffee. So what I did was I was like, all right, I don't want to have to keep finding new customers every time.
Yeah.
So how can I get the same people to buy off me again? Because I did develop, another skill that I had developed was the rule of 7, was the marketing concept, as it was called.
Yeah.
So for those that weren't familiar with the rule of 7, the rule of 7 came about in, I think it was Hollywood in the 30s, maybe, when cinema became a thing. They figured out that they had to have 7 touch points with a potential customer for them to come and pay money to go to the movie theater and watch a movie. That rule of 7 then stuck around. I might have the decade wrong, but that rule of 7 stuck around in marketing for quite a long time. It was adopted, and it was proven in many, many different markets that it takes 7 touch points with people for them to gain our trust. So that could be, word of mouth, a billboard, a letterbox drop, an ad on TV, a newspaper article, radio, door-to-door salesman, whatever it might have been back in that time. 7 touch points was enough for people to get their wallet out to buy something from you, to trust you enough to buy something from you. That was something that we did as detectives to get people to trust us, to talk to them as we'd create touch points with them. I won't go into the whole psychology of that from an investigator point of view, but it worked. And it worked on people who didn't really want to talk to me. So, and it worked exceptionally well in marketing. That rule changed over the years as social media's come in, and it's up around 20 to 21 touch points. And I'm like, far out. If I've got to have 20 to 21 touch points because of the amount of content that's out there now with a potential client, like that's expensive.
Yeah.
So what I did is I would go back to them and I would say, hey, I'm glad you love this. This is what else I've got that you might like. And it was another design, let's say for the German Shepherd people. It's another design for them. In fact, one of my biggest markets, ironically, was to Irish Americans. So I would create multiple products around Irish American heritage.
Okay.
And every time I'd create something, people would love it. Where most of my wins happened, where people are constantly trying to compete with me and more people came out with these concepts, was in advertising. So that's the tip of the iceberg they could see. So they thought, oh, Dan's advertising, I will go and advertise the same and I'll have the same products and we'll be able to compete. My secret was retention marketing. So that was email, Google, organics. I would have a repeat customer rate of 60%. I still do to this day.
Wow.
And my average order value was $150. So it was 1.5 pair of leggings is what people were buying. And then my lifetime value sat at $370. Those people that spent the $150 would come back 2.1 times. So I knew the value of retention marketing because being risk adverse, I didn't want to just keep spending to acquire new customers.
Right.
Having to come up with new ways to find people, having to spend more money to get more new customers. I wanted new customers, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I also knew that once I had them, how much they were worth to me. Whereas the competitors were going out and they were spending X amount to try and acquire someone, but they had no retention marketing. So they had no upsells, they had no cross sells, they had no mechanism to get them to become a repeat purchaser. So they had a threshold of how much they could spend to acquire a new customer. I knew front end I could run at a loss acquiring a new customer if I really wanted to. So I could outspend them in those ads because I knew on the back end I would get them.
You'd get the repeat, all right.
Yeah, I get the repeats. And that's where that competitive edge was for me. And that's where other businesses came and went. And it's a lot more common knowledge now in terms of, best practices. But back in 2016, 2017, 2018, it was not as prevalent that, hey, you need to have email marketing. Email marketing was, hey, you left this in the cart, come back and get it, saved it for you. Like that was it. And a 10% pop up on your website to get people there. But, I developed these sophisticated retention systems and educated people and showed them new products and showed them complementary products and offered them VIP discounts to come back and things along those lines. So I really looked after those existing customers because I didn't have to pay for them. I didn't have to build trust with them. I had a good product, it was good support, it was made in the USA. Like I ticked all the boxes for people to go, this brand says what they say they do and they're good. So provided you've got a good product, you can get repeat customers. And that's what retention marketing to me.
That's fantastic. I mean, you have covered a lot of ground in just a short amount of time. I think there's going to be a lot of great takeaways here. Maybe let's talk a little bit about data, a little bit about how you look at analytics. I know you've worked with brands of all sizes and your own brands as well. How do you coach brands to approach data and testing and iteration? How do you, at a high level, teach them how to utilize those tools?
Yeah. So fundamentally, it's unit economics. Mm-hmm. And that's a fancy way of saying, know your numbers. The amount of brands that are doing well, that come to us and we do an audit of their account, and I'm like, what's your cost of goods? Mm-hmm. What's your fixed costs? What's your shipping cost? What's your conversion rate? What is your repeat customer rate? What is the lifetime value of the customers? And they don't know any of it. They might know bits and pieces of it, but they don't know the complete picture. So then they'll say to us, hey, Dan, can you take this $1,000 and turn it into $3,000 for me because that's my break-even point? And I'm like, how do you know that's your break-even point? Right. They're like, well, we just know. And I'm like, okay, let's not just know. We created a customer portal where the customer inputs all of this We then have a calculation, which is unit economics. And it's like, you actually don't need a 3-time return on ad spend. So that 1,000 into 3,000. What you actually need is 2.2 is your break even. Once we establish all of these baselines, they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, so if we're getting 3, you're not breaking even, we can scale. And they're like, and it's a big aha moment for a lot of them, because a lot of people have started their business based on a passion they have. There's a lot of people that are running businesses based on filling a gap in the market based on a passion that they have that they couldn't find elsewhere. So they've gone out and started it themselves. So they're coming at it from a passion perspective, not from a data-driven perspective. So we come in and we really nail down the data. And then we try and say, right, well, if we can improve your conversion rate by this percentage and your repeat customer rate by this percentage, not spend more, let's try and move some of these other metrics for you. Let's try and get your average order value up by 10%. And we'll see how that moves the needle for you. And they're like, this is amazing. Like, we just thought we had to keep spending to make more. And it's not the case. And then we talk to them about retention, about why we want repeat customers and how we can remarket to them for free using email or other mechanisms. So it's the data, it's knowing your data. If you don't know your data, it's going to be very, very hard for you to scale. Knowing your data, I think, or not knowing your data is one of the biggest stresses as well in business, in any business. If you're not sure how much things cost or what you need to do to actually be making profit or draw a wage out of it, it's very stressful, because you've got these, being in business, we all have these peaks and troughs. We're like, oh my God, this business is amazing. Oh my God, it's amazing. Oh my God, I'm going to go get a job because I can't handle this anymore. We're going to scale to the moon. And that's the reality of business. And so what we're trying to do is create this consistency like this. And we're talking about it in a sports analogy. The best sporting teams, the ones that perform consistently well over long periods of time, the difference between their best game and their worst game is very small. That's what we want with your business. That's what we mean by consistency. I want your best month and your worst month. The difference between them is not this variation or this variable that's going to cause you this huge amount of stress. I want you to know that we've got a consistency, and hey, yeah, we've taken a little bit of a dip here, but on average, we're going to sit somewhere in that middle there. Let's not go and buy a Ferrari based on the fact of our best month, and let's not sell the house based on our worst month. Let's just look at what the data is telling us, where that consistency is. Where are we going to forecast that we're going to be based on that data? It takes a lot of stress away, because the data always ends up leading the way for you anyhow.
Excellent. Well, Dan, this has been tremendous. I'm sure people, after hearing this, are going to want to work with you at Elite Brands or learn more about your story. Where can people find you, connect with you, work with you? Where are the best places to find Dan?
No pitch. If you want to hear more about us or what we do, if you go to our website, elitebrands.org, so elitebrands.org, you'll see about what we do, who we are. There's a team of 14 of us, that work with the brand. And fundamentally what Elite Brands is when I was scaling GearBunch, I went through 7 agencies, and I actually didn't like agencies, but got asked enough times to help other brands that eventually I built in-house for GearBunch the agency model that I wanted, where if I emailed them, they'd reply. If I needed to get hold of them, I could through a daily communication channel. We say what we're going to do, and what we do works. We've got a system to it. Whereas a lot of the agencies were a bit of a mess, and I got really frustrated, and that's why I started Elite Brands. You can see our story on elitebrands.org. If you want to connect with me and have a chat, you can. There's a button there to contact me on the website. There's also all our socials there. We update the socials every 1 to 2 days with some sort of bit of information that's going to be helpful to you across, whether it's meta ads, email marketing through Klaviyo, Google ads, or even a bit of CRO. But yeah, nothing to sell. If you want to connect with me, connect. I'm always happy to have a chat. As you can tell, I talk a lot. So
That's the best kind
Yeah.
of podcast guest, is one that talks a lot and is interesting. So you've
Okay.
done a
Well,
fantastic job.
tick on the talks a lot. Whether other people find it interesting or not, I guess it depends on your listeners.
Man. Yeah, I mean, no, it's not the forum, but I would love to hear sometime about maybe homicide detective stories. That sounds like a pretty interesting world too. So
It is an interesting world. And ironically, from a marketing perspective, people remember you when you tell them that's what you used to do. Even if they forget your name, they're like, "You're that guy from Australia who used to be a homicide detective." I'm like, "Yes, I am." So there might be a little bit of method to my madness about bringing that up as well.
well, Dan,
Yeah,
thanks so much for joining today. This was super informative and really entertaining. So thanks so much.
no problems. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you taking your time.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.